deck, and we can go ahead and get started now. We're about 3 or 4 minutes after the hour, so we'll get started. Okay, thank you for being here. Some of you may have been at the 4 previous meetings. This is our 5th meeting of the year. This group has taken off, and we're really, really glad that you all are participating. If you missed any of the 4 previous meetings, recordings for those meetings can be found out on the Tableau user group hub. So those recordings are out there. You can download them. You can look at them at your leisure. Let's go ahead and we'll give you some ground rules. We record every meeting, like I just said. This recording will be up probably next week. We got a holiday weekend coming up, but the recording will be up on that site next week. Your individual audio and videos are disabled because there's probably going to be 600 or 700 people on this call. So we'll try to keep things fairly simple with what we're talking about. Please use the chat to communicate among yourselves. If you have a question, drop it into the Q&A. Things are happening very fast out there in the chat, and sometimes it's hard to see questions as they come up. But we've got a whole crew of people here that are monitoring the Q&A, and we're going to get your questions answered. But we're going to save a couple questions, and maybe Ann will have time to answer a couple questions after her presentation. Okay. This group is your group. We try to do things here for you. We're going to meet every 6 to 8 weeks. As a matter of fact, the next 2 meetings have already been scheduled. October 13th will be the next meeting, and then the final meeting of the year will be December the 1st, and we'll have more to say about that later. Each meeting has 2 topics. One is the how does that work topic, and that's where Klaus and I try to get under the covers of Tableau and show you how something works. And then we have a featured guest speaker, and I think that we're going to introduce Ann in just a second, but we're thrilled to have Ann with us today. We're going to be talking about table calculations the entire day. Klaus and I are going to get the intro into table calculations, and then Ann's got a presentation on how to use table calculations and where you would use table calculations. And after that, we also are going to have a Kahoot quiz, and the first place finisher, and that's going to get a free e-learning license. There we go. For those of you who don't know Ann Jackson, you're in for a thrill today. Ann is a 5-time data visionary, Zen master. I guess we put a slash in there now, don't we, Ann? Something like that. You're a 5-time data visionary. She's the head of the data school in New York, part of the information lab. For those of you who do know Ann, you know she is an absolute beast and absolutely the best way in the community. And we are just thrilled to have her here today, speaking to us. Ann has written a book, and she has graciously given us 3 copies that we're going to be giving away during today's presentation. Ann, you want to just say a couple of words about your book?
Yeah, so first, thank you all for joining us virtually. I can see we're just about at 500 people, which is amazing. So Tableau Strategies is a book that Luke Stanky, fellow visionary, and I co-wrote together during the pandemic. It's designed to take you into how you answer a business question, what a business question is, and how you translate that into Tableau. So imagine you're being asked a question. What is the visualization you would use to represent that, and how do you build that in Tableau? You all get the benefit, the 3 lucky recipients, of receiving a soft copy, which is quite nice because you can copy and paste the calculated fields in from a PDF to Tableau to even accelerate your learning. But it's meant to be sort of a hands-on reference guide and recipe book with a lot of use cases. There's a lot of fun data to work with in there.
Okay. Viraj, are we ready to give away the first book?
Yes, we are, and let me just quickly share my screen. So what we have done is we have pulled out all the list of names who have joined us, who has RSVP'd and joined us, and one of the lucky winner, first lucky winner would be getting the book. So let me just draw it out. And so what we will do is whoever wins right now, I would request you to message me your email ID so that we can send you out the book. Okay, Dwayne Cypress is our first winner for he gets the book Tableau Strategies. I would request you, Dwayne, to message me your email ID.
Okay, very good. Very good. Congratulations, Dwayne. That's fabulous. Okay.
Yeah, fascinating technology, Viraj.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Hi, also from my side. And before we jump right into table calculation, I'd like to briefly introduce the team. As you can imagine, such a big event every 6 to 8 weeks. It takes some effort to organize, and we are really happy to have a great team put together over the past month and weeks. And we are from different areas of the world, like this map beautifully shows. Yeah, and I really appreciate everyone being on the team, and it's really fun to work together. We are all doing this voluntarily, so thanks again. And maybe everyone introduces her or himself briefly. And Reyes, it's your first meeting today with us, so you want to kick it off?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Reyes. It's as Klaus mentioned, I'm new to the team. I'm from Fort Collins, Colorado, and I've been using Tableau for just over a year now.
Okay, Enid, do you want to go next?
Yeah, my name is Enid Burchett. I'm from Indianapolis. I've been using Tableau for a while now, but I feel like every time I learn something new.
Laura?
Oh, hi, my name is Laura. I'm from Chicago. I've been using Tableau for a year and a half now. Been making some dashboards and things at work, and this group has been really like one of the best things that I've like volunteered for, and I learned so much from all of the sessions that we've had. So looking forward to everyone having fun. Thank you.
Viraj?
Hey, hi everyone. This is Viraj from Mumbai, India. And as I always say, I am newbie by heart, Tableau newbie by heart. So always learning new things. And this group is awesome. And thank you everyone for joining in. And we stand to learn a lot from this group. Welcome aboard.
Jim, a few words on your person, or?
Okay. Yeah, I'm Jim Dehner. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, or just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And Klaus and I are the co-founders and co-leaders of this group. We are really thrilled with the response that you, the community, have, the way you've responded to this group. It's just very, very rewarding. I happen to be a visionary, and I'm a 5-time Tableau Forums ambassador. So maybe I've seen you out there on the forum. Maybe I've answered one of your questions along the way. Klaus, back to you.
Yeah, and I'm Klaus. I'm from Münster, Germany. I'm also a Tableau visionary, and I was lucky to win RNViz in 2018. Yeah, and I'm also happy and proud to be part of this group. And this was really exciting this year so far. And we have lots of more exciting things to come. Good, but today will be exciting as well. And we are talking about table calculations. In the first part, like Jim already said, we are going to introduce the basics. And then Anne will do a deep dive on the most important or the most relevant chart types that require table calculation. So to give you some use cases also for table calculations. When I look back at my beginning, when I started using Tableau in 2017 and 2018, I did not feel too comfortable with table calculation. And I think that is what many experience when they start using it. it always felt like, yeah, I know how to set them up, but they never do what I want them to do. And that's why I started cheating a little bit. So I calculated ranks outside of Tableau or did the running totals outside of Tableau. And I thought, okay, I have LODs, I can do lots of things with LODs. But eventually I turned into the direction of table calculations because there are some use cases where you just need them. And I also talked to people that are much smarter than me, like Anne, for example. We met in 2018. And when at that time, I still thought I don't need them, table calculations, but Anne knew it already better. So I'm still not that good as Anne with table calculations, but I think sufficiently good enough to make them do what I want them to do. And we want to share some basics, like we said today, and then see the use cases to get you started with it and yes, let you know how to do it. Good, and this topic is also a good topic to repeat some of the things we talked about the last two meetings. Thinking 2 meetings back, we talked about the order of operation. And as you can see in this chart on the left, or in the image on the left side, table calculation happen at the very end of the order of operation. Yeah, so we use table calculations to answer analytical questions based on values that are currently in the view. After all the filters have been applied, after LODs have been calculated, then it's the time for the table calculations. And yeah, Jim?
Klaus, this is a question that comes up over and over again. And as a matter of fact, just this morning, I was answering this same question where someone had run through a ranking calculation and they wanted to take the rank from one sheet and fix it using an LOD expression and then put it onto another table. And you obviously can't do that because LODs are calculated in step 4 of the order of operation up in the green area, and table calculations aren't calculated until well after that. Okay, yeah. I'm sorry, Klaus, go ahead.
No, just interrupt me whenever you want. Yeah, just to give you kind of a structure on this big topic, we've made up these 3 buckets. So table calculations are there to answer analytical questions. So like a running total, like a rank, like a difference, like a percentage of total. And to do that, we use functions. We talked about Tableau functions last time, and the table calculations are functions that can be used to answer these questions. For example, when you want to calculate a running total, a running sum, for example, you need the running sum function. Or if you want to do a difference, you want to calculate a difference, you need lookup. Or if you want to do a percentage of total, you need a lookup and the total. Yeah, so we use these functions to build the calculations that are able to answer these questions. And then I think the kind of complicated thing with table calculations are the settings. There are several aspects you have to keep an eye on. We will keep it simple for today and talk about compute using, which is actually or basically defining scope and direction of the table calculation. Yeah, the other ones are also relevant, of course, but that is maybe a topic for one of the next sessions, or maybe Anne will use some of these settings in her presentation. Okay, then just remember what we did last time. We talked about calculations, and we introduced the different levels of calculations, like record and row level calculations. You can see it here in this example. If we build a calculation like this, quantity times price, you see there is no aggregation or no function used in this calculation. This is a row level calculation. Yeah, for example, in January, price of 2, quantity of 10, 2 times 10, we have a revenue of 20. Then the next step is the aggregation. So when we bring a measure, and revenue is a measure, when we bring it into the view, it gets aggregated by default. And in this example, for example, the revenues for the customers A to D are aggregated for the month of January. 20, 400, 304 will make the 724. That was basically the topic of last time. And today we will extend it one step further. We talk about table calculations. And as you can see in this image, the table calculation is always based on an aggregation. So we take the sum of revenue, and in this case, build the running sum across the month or down the month. Yeah, January is 724, February is 368, and the running sum is therefore in February 1092. Yeah, so one important thing already to memorize: when you do a table calculation, you always have to do the aggregation first. Running sum of revenue won't work. Running sum of revenue will work. Yeah. We have 3 goals for Jim's and my presentation. We want to show you how to set up a table calculation. That's fairly the simplest part of it. Then we want to talk about scope and direction, or the compute using dialog. And we will give you a basic introduction into how to navigate the table with index, with first and last, and also show you a mini use case, what to do with it.
Okay, Klaus, one point I'd like to make here, and this is the only time you'll ever hear me say, I want you to think of your data like an Excel table or a spreadsheet table. And we talk about scope and direction. If you think about what you do in Excel, you write a formula in a cell and then you copy that cell and you either go down the column or you go across the rows. So when we think about scope, it's how much of the table you're working with at a time. And we talk about direction being down or across that table. And that's the visible table that you would see in your view. And there are 5 functions that you can use to navigate the table, and they're very similar to what you would do with offset in Excel. But we'll get into that later, and you can see how those work.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Klaus.
Yeah, and before we jump right into Tableau, we've put together some resources for you, because this is such a big topic. If you really want to dig into it, you need some further resources. Jim has written a great blog. Information Lab has put together great resources. Erica Hughes and Andy Kriebel. I personally love the blog series from Robin Schulte from Interworks, and Marian Ehrens has also put together a great list of links on this topic and other topics as well. So you will get this list of links with the presentation, and these are some websites where you can start with table calculations. Okay, good. Let's go right into Tableau. We have the 3 goals. First goal for today is how to set up a table calculation. So I've created this little view. We have category, we have subcategory, and I'm showing the sales, and I've prepared a copy of my sales measure to have both the table calculation and the original metric next to each other. Yeah, and you're seeing also we already have the aggregation. So when we put sales into the view, it gets aggregated. And the first 2 ways of setting up a table calculation is the quick table calculation setting here. And we want to do a running total. So I'm using running total from the quick table calculation. And you see we get a running sum down the table from bookcases to phones. And these 260,000 matches the grand total here on the left side. Yeah, that's one way. Getting rid of a table calculation is as easy as clearing this one. So it's back again. And the second way of doing it is through the add table calculation dialog. So I'm choosing that one. And then we define the calculation type, which is a running total. Here we can also define the sum, could also be an average maybe, and then define the compute using. We will dig into that later. So let's stay for running sum for now, and we obviously get the same result like we did before. Then I think we also talked about that last time. Let's just briefly look into this field. So right now, you see this little white triangle, and this is always indicating that we have a table calculation in place. And by dragging this metric from the measure value pane to the data pane, we can make this a regular calculated field. Let me call this running sum 1. And let's look into it. And you see what happened. So we talked about our analytical question was the running sum of sales. And the function that we are using is running sum of sales. Yeah, so when seeing this, it's, I think, quite obvious that you don't need the add table calculation dialog or the quick table calculation. We could just create this running sum by saying running sum, the function I want to have, running sum of sales. Yeah, so we can do it like that as well and bring that in, and that does exactly the same. Okay, this is quite easy for just absolute numbers. It gets a little bit tricky with already aggregated calculations. So in this view, we have the profit ratio. And let's look into profit ratio, which is the sum of profit divided by the sum of sales. And an analytical question now could be, I want to see the running profit ratio down the year. So where are we cumulative profit ratio when looking at the 6 months of the first half of the year? Now let's try to do the same way like we did before with a running total. And then you will see that Tableau just sums up the percentages, which does not make sense for February and March. It's good for the total, but it's not okay for the specific month. So in this case, always keep in mind what is the numerator and the denominator for your calculation. And we need profit and sales. Let's put it next to each other. And then also do the running total for profit and the running total for sales. And then do the running profit ratio by dividing the running sum of profit by the running sum of sales. Yeah, and this is our running profit. Let me make it a percentage right from the start and bring this in. And in this way, we get the running profit ratio down the month, and again to the 15.1% at the end of Q2. Jim, anything to add from your side?
No, I think you're on it. One of the things that I see you doing that people should take note of. You are creating the calculation and you are writing the table calculation yourself, and you're using predefined, or you've created a running total of sales and profit, and you're able to just pull that in by right clicking that value and dragging it into your equation and making it very simple. Yeah. I know when I started, I used to default to go to the quick table calculation and just use the quick table calculation over and over again. Didn't take too long before I started writing my own table calculations. And using the quick table calculation is a real good shortcut to not only get the syntax right, but also make it easier to write the calculation.
Yeah, absolutely. And the good thing when dragging the fields to the formula editor is that it also keeps the setting of compute using. We will talk about compute using next.
Yes.
So scope and direction. And when you drag the fields into the editor, it will fix the scope and direction that you've set before. Okay, so next step, scope and direction.
Klaus, sorry, just sorry to interrupt, Viraj. So just one question, that is, someone probably missed, why didn't the January and February work? Why didn't it work? So probably, can you take that?
Yeah, so when we take back the original profit ratio, yeah, then Tableau would just sum up the percentages. So 16.3 plus 7.9 is the 24.3. And this is not, this is just not the accumulative profit ratio, but it's just the sum of the percentages. And therefore, we have to calculate based on the running sum of profit and based on the running sum of sales. And this is what went wrong here.
Yeah. When calculating averages or rates, always calculate the numerator separate from the denominator and then do the math. Because as Klaus just pointed out, when we just drag it to the table or drag it to the canvas, Tableau is going to default to summing those values, which is not mathematically what you want at all.
Okay, scope and direction. We've used these terms now quite a bit. And yeah, let us explain what it is. So we've made up this table. So we are looking at regions and segments across different categories. And again, let's look at sum of sales. We're using the quick table calculation. And now we are looking into the settings here at the bottom. And there is first, we have compute using, and compute using is defining both scope and direction. Let's first talk about scope. Right now, the scope is set to table. Yeah, that means the values are aggregated across the table. In contrast to that, the pane would aggregate would accumulate the profits in the pane. The pane is this are these three members here, these three values made up by the segment. So right now we are summing up from consumer to home office, and again from consumer to home office for every pane, for every region we have in the view. We can also compute using specific dimensions, like categories, for example. When we use the category setting, we are not accumulating here these values, but only the category value. It's going across, sorry. So this one plus these is this one, plus technology is that one. Or we can accumulate through regions, then we go down from that, plus these is that, plus these is that, plus these is that. Now this is the scope, the table, pane, cell, or specific dimensions. The second thing is the direction, and this is also in the same setting, and you've already seen it here in brackets. Across is from left to right, down is from top to bottom. Yeah, and we can do all kind of aggregations. For example, when we first accumulate across the table and then down, it's going like from left to right, from left to right, and so on, till we get the total at the very bottom line. Or if we go down and then across, then we first accumulate down the table, and then we restart here, or we go on here at the top and go like that. Now we can do the same for the pane. Now let's do pane down and across. So we are first going down from in the central, from consumer to corporate in the home office, and then continue again with consumer. And so we get this zigzag pattern if you would connect the marks in this case. And then we restart, since we chose Spain, we restart in east, restart in south, and restart in west. Now that is the direction, across, down, down, then across, across, then down. Yeah, Jim, anything to add?
Are you going to go into the editor?
Yeah, I
Division.
will do that. I will do that here on this one with index.
Okay.
And that what
Okay, good.
that is the third topic for today. The navigation functions like index. So index is giving you a value based on the dimensions in the view. And what Jim just mentioned is the editor, the table calculation editor, which we are going to look at now. And a handy thing in the editor is the calculation assistance. Yeah, so right now we are using index, which is, let me show it to you, which is just this function index, then bracket, then the brackets. And right now we are using index across the table. And this is actually counting here the categories, 1, 2, 3. If we are going down the table, we are calling these, we are counting these values, so from 1 to 12. If we are going across and then down, we start at the top left, go to the right, and then zigzag to the bottom right. And if we again use table down and then across, we are starting here, going down, and then this way. Yeah, this editor, this calculation assistance is quite handy when you want to understand how scope and direction actually are set. Yeah, when we go to pane, it's just going here on pane and then restarting in the next region.
Yeah, the calculation assistant will highlight the scope. Okay. And then you can play with the direction to see what direction the calculation is being performed in. It's very useful, particularly when you first get started. Okay.
Okay, so that is index. Then maybe let's look at one or two others to navigate the table. We will use first later. So first is just also the function first. And when we bring in first, first is giving a 0 for the first value in the view. And right now, direction is again set across the table. If we set it down the table, we would have the 0 at the very first line. And if we would have pane down, then across, we would have the first value here, 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 and here. Yeah, and when we can use this function first together with, for example, lookup to identify specific values that we want to use in calculations, for example. Very similar is the value or the function last. Let's bring in last. Last is giving a 0 for the last value. Again, here the scope and direction is set to table across. If we set it to table down, it's given the 0 here and according the according numbers here above. Yeah, there are others like size. For example, we won't dig into that one at this point. Yeah, then another I think handy function is lookup. With lookup, you can get different values or specific values from within your table. For example, it looks like this. So we are doing a lookup on sum of sales. And for the lookup function, you can define an offset. Yeah, I've created a parameter offset here. And with the minus in front of that, we are looking back. Yeah, therefore, look back. Okay, so right now the offset is at 0. When we set the offset to 1, we look 1 row back to the bookcases in this case. Scope and direction is set to table down. That means if we go on increasing the offset, we are getting different values based on that. Yeah, so you can get values from previous lines, or if you just get rid of that minus in the function, you can also get values from next values. Yeah, this is basically lookup.
Yeah, if you could open up that formula again. I like to think about this the same way you'd look like an offset in Excel. And in words, I would say, go to the column marked sum of sales and go back. That's the negative sign, go back, whatever that offset is. And it's now set to 5. Go back 5 rows or go back 2 rows. Or if it was columns, if we're going across, you would go from right to left being a negative value, or left to right for a positive value. So you'd start with the column sales and go from there, go from your current position to the new position and retrieve the value that's there and use that value.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. We do have a request. If you can explain the offset once more.
Klaus, would you set it to 1?
Mm-hmm.
Set the offset to 1. Okay. And just look at the month of January. Okay. And this formula says, look at the sales column. I'm sitting in row number 2, but I want to go to the sales column in row number 1. I'm in row 2 minus 1. So I'm going to go to row number 1 and retrieve the 298 that's in there. Now, if we go down 1 row, we're going to retrieve what's in column. I'm in row 3 and I'm going to retrieve what's in column 2, 2248, and so on, because we're going down the column.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
And it would just look different if we were going across the table. Yep. Then we were in column 2 and received the value from column 1.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe one use case for that. So my background is from finance, and here we are looking at a P&L, and what we for example, want to do often with P&Ls is to calculate margins. And in this case, we want to do a sales margin. I've prepared here the first calculation again, and we are using that. Just let me bring it in. So this is the first value. This is the last value. Let me just do it for the current year. And we can now use first to get this revenue, which we want to take as a denominator for all the values in a calculation by just writing down that calculation. So our revenue is the lookup of sum, not of sum of sales, but of this value of the current year value. And we want to take the first one. I could use this field or just the function. And this is the revenue. Yeah? And this lets me now do the calculation. I mean, it would be easy in Excel. We could just reference this cell, but we cannot do that in Tableau. But with table calculations, and in this case with lookup and first, we can put this number in every row of our table. And then we can just do the sales margin by saying, let's take the current year value and divide it by the revenue. Yeah, and this will be a percentage. And let's bring it in. And we're good. Yeah, so this would be one typical use case where you use lookup, where you use first. these navigation functions to navigate the table to do what you want to do. And in this case, divide all the first values by the first value. Okay, good. I think looking at the time, we have to move on.
Yeah, I think we're ready to give away another book.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Viraj, do you want to go?
Raj, are you ready to go?
Yes, just let me just close the Q&A. It's been a lot of questions, and I am really happy that everyone is finding it useful. Okay, so,
Fortunately, Anne's going to answer all those questions here in just a second.
oh
Her
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I have seen Anne answer some of them, so thank you, Anne. Okay, so here we go for the second winner for the Tableau Strategist book is, fingers crossed, it's Kimberly Houghton. So congratulations, Kimberly. Please share your email ID with me and we'll send you the book. Thank you.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks, Raj. Now we're ready for Anne.
All right. I'm going to share my screen. As has been mentioned many times, I love table calculations. Klaus said it well. I think my journey is quite similar, where I started using level of detail expressions, LODs, and then eventually learned the ways of table calculations. I'm going to share a top 5 charts that you can use, or use cases for using table calculations. Of course, this is not the end all be all top 5, but these are the top 5 that I probably use the most throughout my day to day. So let's go into the first one. This is actually the first chart type that I learned how to make and use table calculations with. This is a Pareto chart. If you're not familiar with a Pareto chart, you might be familiar with what's usually called the 80-20 rule, or the Pareto principle, where 80% of issues or stuff is caused by 20% of things. So this is the first one that I want to walk through with you. Going back to my career and my history, I actually worked at a pharmacy, and we were trying to figure out what the most common prescription entry errors were. So we wanted to see if there were a small number of human errors that were responsible for the majority of issues. And it was actually true with what we were doing, that most of the issues, more than 80% actually, were for just a few small causes. So this chart tends to be great when you're looking for root cause analysis or factors that may cause something to be. Now, I will say the headline of this chart is how many subcategories make up 80% of sales. If you look at this, we're seeing the sales for each of those individual subcategories, and we're seeing a cumulative percent of total that goes up to 100%. It's not really true that 20% of the subcategories make up 80% of the sales, because it's really more about 50-50. I think there's maybe 17 subcategories, and we've got a pretty good number of them that are contributing to that large portion of 80% sales. But let's dive into how you would build this using table calculations. So I am going to start a new worksheet, and I am going to bring my subcategory on to the column shelf, and then I'm going to drag on sales. Nothing revolutionary here. It's a bar chart showing the sum of sales for each individual category. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sort that in descending order. If you go back to what we have here, that's part of what we need with a Pareto chart, is we need them to be in some sort of order so that we can then do math and figure out the accumulation. Much when Klaus was speaking about the running total or the running sum, we're going to need to do some version of that. So step 1 is to sort your data. It just looks nicer as well. So we will sort it. So that is the beginning of what will become our Pareto chart. The next step, I'm going to hold down my control key because I am on a PC. I'm just going to copy the sum of sales. As Klaus showed, you can make quick table calculations on on base measures. So I have sum of sales and I want to now create a table calculation using it. So I've just dragged on another copy. What we're going to do is I am going to take this bar chart here and I am going to turn that into that cumulative percent of total line chart. So step one is to right click, and I'm going to add a quick table calculation that's going to be the running total. So now we can see chairs was $335,000. That matches this. But once we get to phones, it's adding that additional 331K to 335K to get us to that 667,000. And then we keep adding up till we get the total sales within our entire data set. I will mention that this workbook is already published up on my Tableau public if you want to download it and reverse engineer or open it up while we're talking. But getting back to the task at hand, this is step one. All I've done is right-clicked, added a quick table calculation that was the running total. This is where it gets fun. I'm going to right click and I'm now going to go in and edit the table calculation. We've been to this window before, but there's something you haven't yet seen, which is this section down here to add a secondary calculation, and specifically a secondary table calculation on top of that. So right now we have just that total sum, that running sum, and I'm going to add a secondary calculation. When I do that, I get to see this secondary section where I can choose another table calculation to do on top of that, which feels a little bit daunting, but don't worry, we don't have to spend too much time here. We're just going to switch this to the percent of total, and you'll see that the axis changed over on the left. Instead of numerical, instead of dollars, we've switched over to a percentage, and it looks like we're mathing up to 100%. We get to the end, we see it's 100%. That's our 17th subcategory, and all is well. We can see that it's definitely doing what I'm expecting it to do. It's going from left to right and figuring out what that percent of total is. Okay, so that is step two. Step three, couple little cleanup steps. So let's go ahead and make it a line chart. And I'm going to go ahead and add my labels just so we can see it. And let me make this black so we can distinguish it from everything else. So now I have my percent of total, my cumulative percent of total here, and I've got my natural sales for each subcategory. My last step is to make this a dual axis. You can do this many different ways. Probably the easiest for me is to right click on the axis and make it a dual axis. Now, if Tableau misbehaves at this point and changes the mark types, that's okay. I can go over to our marks card on the left. See how this became a circle? Let's change it back to a bar, and we've got this measure names on color and they're the same. So I'm just going to take that off so that we're back to the formatting color that I wanted before. And now you'll see I've got my Pareto chart. I've got my sum of sales for each individual subcategory, and then I've got that running cumulative percent of total associated with it. Now there's one last step that we can do as it relates to formatting. If you look back at this, I've gone ahead and I've colored the bars two different colors. They're actually colored if it's up to that 80% and after that 80%. So I want to show you how you can take this one step further and add that in. I'm going to create a new calculated field, and let's call this bar color. And I'm going to just do one really simple thing. I'm going to hold down my control key and I'm going to drag that entire table calculation that I made in the Viz into my calculation editor. So now you can see the building blocks when Jim and Klaus talk about now they build them on their own in the calculation editor. You can just pull those down from the row shelf or the column shelf or wherever into it. So now you can see what's going on. It's taking the running sum of the sum of sales. So sum up our sales, then add them up over time, the running sum. And then we've got the sum of sales as our denominator and the total. And the total is just the entire number. That is that 2.7 million number. So that is always our denominator across the entire data set. And then our numerator for the Viz is adding up the running sum by each subcategory. So that's the beginning of it. And then it's pretty simple. I'll make this even a little bit bigger. We just want this to be less than or equal to 0.8. That's 80%. So this is that percentage. Is it less than or equal to 80%? This is going to be a really simple Boolean calculation. You can see it's true, false. And then I'm going to go to my bar chart and I'm just going to go ahead and drop that on there. So now I have two different colors. One, if the situation is true that this is the first 80%, that majority, when do I get to 80%? And then everything else is a secondary color. One of the nice things about table calculations in general is that they happen right at the very end. So I'm going to go ahead and drop a region filter on, and I'm going to do that just by dragging region onto my filter shelf. Let's choose the West so we can see what happens. Now, a couple nice things happen. Let me go ahead and show this filter, and let's just make it a single value list. So when I chose West, you'll see that the order changed. So they're sorted in the right order. And the bars that were orange are changing, as are the percentages as well. So with table calculations, because it happens right at the very end, we still get all of that really great analytical information, but we're able to use our filters in conjunction with that chart. So that's our first one, the Pareto chart. Anything else that's been done on this is just fancy formatting, which I won't get into, but I do encourage you to play around with fancy formatting. I like this one in particular because we're giving prominence to that big group, and we're really saying, hey, this is 80% of sales. Is that truly 20% of the options? Which it isn't here, but that's okay. We've at least answered the question. Okay. Hopefully you're all with me. Team, any questions I should answer before on the Pareto chart before we move forward?
Yeah, there is one which just now came in. How could you do a countif style calculation to show how many subcategories make up 80% of the sales as a big analytical number?
As a band? Yeah, that
Yeah.
is a great question. So you absolutely could do that. What we might want to do in that situation is, and I'll actually maybe show you a little bit of this in the last example, is use that same thing. And then instead of just having this bar color return a true or false for a specific thing, maybe we instead have this return the name of the subcategory. And then on top of that, we can count the distinct subcategories. So we could then answer that and say it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 subcategories that make up 80% of them. Great question.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's now go back to our second example. This is a fun one. You can do this natively, but I want you to think about me showing you a basic way into doing highlighting, and that you can extend this now that you know a bit more about table calculations. So this one is a min-max highlight, but you could also highlight something that is maybe 2 or 3 standard deviations outside of normal, or it's some specified distance from average. You've got a lot of options. I'm going to just take you through a very basic one. So in this visualization, we've got the monthly sales result. So I'm saying by month, what is the sales? And then you can see the minimum monthly sales value, which occurred here in February 2019, and it was about 3,000, has a bigger, more prominent dot. And then similarly, September of 2019 has a bigger, more prominent dot with a label. Now I've put a filter on this as well. So if I switch to corporate, you're going to see that change. So it's totally dependent on what you have in your visualization, in your chart at the time. So now let's go ahead and build this. We're going to start super simple. We're trending by order date and the sum of sales, trying to keep it simple today. When I work with dates in Tableau, I always right-click drag. So let's take order date and let's right-click drag. The reason I do this is to save a couple of steps, because I will get this drop menu option whenever I do that. So anytime I'm working with dates, that's what I always tell people, right-click drag. If you're not right-click drag, you're probably doing it wrong or not efficiently. So always right-click drag when you are working with dates. Now I'm going to specify the type of date, how I want Tableau to use this date in the visualization. I know I want a continuous, unbound timeline from the beginning of time through the end of time as it relates to my data. So I'm going to go down here and choose the continuous date value of month. Now we can see there's nothing super special going on. I've got Gantt bars or Gantt lines here for each individual month within my data set. So now let's bring on sales so we can see that out there. I'm going to go ahead and drag my segment filter on so you can see that. And I'm going to just filter it to consumer. And let me go ahead and show that filter. And again, make it a single value list so we can see how that changes over each filter specification we have. Okay, so step one. This is how we start. We've got a basic line chart. We're trending over time. Here's where the fun part happens. This time I'm going to do it a little bit differently, and we're going to go into the calculation editor. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create a calculated field. I'm going to call this the min max highlight. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to take the window minimum and the window maximum. So window minimum is of all the marks that are drawn on this chart, which one is the minimum in the window? And then similarly, maximum is the same thing. Which one is the maximum in the window? So our calculation is going to look something like this. If the sum of sales, so remember the sum of the sales is that dot mark, if that is equal to the window min of the sum of sales. So go look at the viz, find the window min sum of sales. If that is equivalent to this value, then what I want you to do is I just want you to put that value here. And what we're doing is basically identifying those dots. They are going to have the same sales value. So I'm going to draw that circle on there. And if it's not there, it's going to end up being a null. And then I'm going to do a little bit of copy paste here just to save a little bit of time. I'm going to paste this down here. I'm going to change this to an else if, and then I'm going to change this to a window max instead of min. And then I'm going to go ahead and end that. So reading it back, if the sum of sales at this data point is equivalent to the minimum sum of sales, then I want you to draw that on there. And similarly for the max. Okay. Now I'm going to drag this out to the side so you can see what's happening. I've got those two dots, and let me go ahead and switch those to circle types now, and let me make them black, and I'm going to make them really big so you can see them. So you can see for the minimum data point and the maximum data point here, I've got a dot for each one, and then everywhere else there is the null. I'm going to right click and I'm going to hide the null indicator. No one needs to know that it's null. Everywhere else, we'll keep that to ourselves. And now we've got the building blocks of what we need to do. One last step here, of course, is we're going to go ahead and make this a dual axis. Now, because these are the same measure, this is sales just shown twice. Make sure you go in and you synchronize your axis. Now, the nice thing is when we have a dual axis, we have two different marks cards, so we can change how they're drawn. So we've got our line and then we've got our circle here. And then we can go ahead and go in and we can label those dots as well. And again, remember, this will use your filter and will change where those dots are drawn at any given point in time. If you're thinking about this and you want to remember this in the future, one thing I like to think about is window min and window max are also the same as reference line calculations. So if I were to come in and I were to drag on a reference line for the sum of sales, if I were to set this to the maximum, that line is the window max of the sum of sales. They are equivalent. When I was learning table calculations, using reference lines was really helpful in me understanding the task. Okay, so that's our second one. Any questions about highlighting min and max or using highlights in general with table calculations?
I think
Okay.
we are good, and yeah.
Thanks, Faraj. Okay, let's move on to the third one. This is a baseline in total. I really like this one. So imagine you have things that happen at different points in time, and there's kind of two things you want to look at. So this is looking at annual sales performance by day. So each line is representing a year of sales that we have in the Superstore data set. And each individual point on this line is a day. You can see it's going up for 2022. I've put a visual indicator here to indicate whether it's today or not, or this day of the year. But what we're going to do is we're going to build a line chart that has the running sum of sales. So by the time we get to end of 2020, we made a total of $472,000 at Superstore. So this is a great way to compare and see if the velocity or how quickly you're earning sales changes from year to year. In particular, we can see some nice things here when things cross over. So we have 2021 right here, but we can see 2022. Maybe this means that they had a spring sale, and that's why sales accelerated up a little bit further. And in general, it looks like year over year, or if we compare the years, it looks like 2022 is doing better than the prior years, which I think is what we all want to hear whenever we're talking about a business earning money. So we're going to go ahead and build this one out. This one's going to be fun. There's going to be a couple different calculations we're going to do to start, but bear with me as we go through them. So the first thing I want to do is I want an axis to where each individual year starts at the same point and goes through each day of the year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a calculated field, and let's call this the day of the year. And all I'm going to do is I am going to take the date part, and it's going to be day of year. So 1 through 365, however many there are of the order date, and specify that. So that's all that it's doing, is just tell me what day of the year is associated with that order date. Now that is going to become what is on my axis. I'm going to drag it up here so Tableau doesn't automatically sum it. You'll see when it's down here, if I try to drag it anywhere, it's got the sum. I don't want it to do that. I want to bring it on as an axis and have it just draw over time. So I'm going to drag it up here, but I am going to make it continuous. Right now it's a blue thing. So if I drag it on, I've got a bunch of headers. I want a continuous number line. So instead, I'm just going to make it a continuous or a green thing. And now you can see what's going on. I've got it starting at 1, going all the way up through 365 or 366, depending on what year we're in. No data in this view yet, so let's start populating it with now the sum of sales. This is a bit scary to look at, but if we were to break it down, this dot is all of the sales that we received in Superstore on the very first day of the year for all the years in there. For more clarity, let's right-click drag our order date, because I want to draw a color and a different line for each year. So I'm right-click dragging and specifying year. Now you can see I've got a line for each individual year. So here in 2019, this was a killer day, right? We got 28,000 in sales on the 77th day of 2019. So the last step, just to prettify it up and kind of complete it, is to turn this into a running total. So this is another quick table calculation. We can come in and just make it a running total. Now we can compare year by year exactly what is going on and see if that velocity or trend is changing. This is another good inflection point. Maybe there was a sale in 2019 that didn't happen in 2020 that accelerated our total sales for the year. Now, as a last step, one thing I would encourage you to do is right-click drag onto the tooltip your order date, and we're going to choose the attribute. What attribute does is it aggregates dimensions. So we're already just saying, Tableau, just give us back that dimension, that value, but we don't want it to be used in a table calculation. So attribute's a good way to do that. So now when I hover over, you can see on my tooltip a little bit more friendly. Here's May 19th, 2022, or back that day that we were talking about. Here's a really good day, that 77th day. No one's going to know what the 77th day of 2019 is, but they'll know when March 18th is. So I can add that in to my visualization. There's one other thing that I did in this chart. I won't rebuild it, but I will just show you the today line. So the nice thing is I've got this 0 up through 365. I can figure out the day of year for today by doing the same function, the date part day of year for today, and specifying it. And then I can drag this out. Let me drag it up a bit so we don't sum it, but let me make it continuous. And now let me just drag that onto our marks card. And I can add a reference line for the entire table that is my today line. So now we know, and what I did in my pretty viz is I just shaded the now part, or today moving forward. My thinking was people would want to see how we track over time, and then we get some sense, okay, we're here now today. What does the future maybe look like? There's one other tricky thing I did for formatting that I want to show you, which is these dates down here. So if you look at what I just rebuilt for you, you see it starts at 0 and it goes all the way up to 365. Well, you can right click and edit and format the numbers so that they look like dates instead. So if I come in and customize this, I can put something like month, 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 and then the day in there. Hopefully. Oh, the axis. Sorry, I'm on the pane. Let me go back to scale. Let me do it again and go month, month, month. Now we see the months actually showing up, and then the day. or the day, you can see that January 9th, it switches from 09 to 9. So let's just do the month, and the day. If you're asking why is it January 9th, 19th, and so on, this is Tableau just automatically drawing the axis. You can certainly come in and customize it further where you want those tick marks to start. But for me, it's fine for them to just start however they want. And now you have a wonderful sort of common baseline to see how annual sales compare throughout time. I'm going to pause. Any questions about this chart?
Just maybe a revisit on how you created the today line.
Yes. Let me jump back in and I will build it from scratch. So what we're doing is everywhere in this axis, we are figuring out what day of the year it is. So today's day of year, and we're going to use the date part function. So I'm going to switch it down over here to date, and I'm going to switch to date part, and it says returns a part of the given date as an integer where it's specified. So this, all I did was do date part, specify what date part you want. For me, I want day of year. And then there is a function called today. Let's go look at it down here. It says it returns the current date. So although this isn't today, that's what it does. Today is September 1st, 2022. So it is now looking at this function to see what it is. And that is how you generate the today's day of year. I did two other things, which was I dragged it up here above the measures and dimensions line because I don't want it to be the sum of today's year. The reason I don't want it to be the sum of today's year is what if I were to do that, it's imagine for every row in your data, you've got a column and it says it's whatever the 200th day in the year. I don't want to sum up all those 200s. I really just want it to be 200. So step one was dragging it up here so that it's no longer a measure that Tableau thinks you should aggregate. A second step is instead of it being a blue thing, a discrete thing where we draw headers, I want it to be a continuous thing. I want it to be green because this axis is green. You can only put reference lines on green things. So because this axis is green, which you can see it's a green field, it's a continuous field, I changed it to continuous by right-clicking. And then the last step was dragging it onto the marks card. When I dragged it onto the marks card, that's what allows me to go in and add the reference line in there and choose it from this value drop down. Any other questions?
Thank you for that explanation. I think it was quite interesting.
Awesome. Well, let's go to the last one. This one you've probably already done, and you can do this a variety of ways, but here's probably my preferred way to go about it. So we are looking at a bar chart that has the top 25 customers we can choose. So if I wanted to change this to top 10, I can choose those. I'm in New York. Here's the top 10 in New York. When I go back to Arizona, here are the top 10 in Arizona. I can configure it to be the top 25 if I want. So we are going to build this one next. So to start out very basic, we're just going to drag the customer name on. Even if Tableau says there's a lot of members of this, that's fine. I want all the customers on there. And let's go ahead and just filter to a single state to begin with. Let's choose Arizona because it's going to be a little bit easier. So we've already limited it down. We only have 100 customers in Arizona versus the 1,000 plus in the entire data set. Again, we're looking at the sum of sales. So I'm going to drag that on. I'm going to sort it. Again, you can sort down here on the axis or up at the toolbar, wherever you feel comfortable, or you could even right click and you can go in and sort it this way and choose the field. We'll keep it easy. I'm just going to go up on the toolbar and now they are sorted in descending order by their sum of sales. Let me make that a bit larger. Now, I mentioned very early on in the chat that my favorite table calculation function is index. Jim and Klaus mentioned this. Index is great. It just counts things. It starts at 1 and it counts up. It's never repeated unless you start over, like in your pane or something else. It's always going to have a 1 and a 2 and so on. So I like to use that whenever I create these. Bear with me. This is where I usually say Tableau gets ugly before it gets pretty. As an ad hoc calculation, so just double clicking on the row shelf, I'm going to type index, open, close parenthesis. Index doesn't take any arguments in, and I'm going to push enter. Now, Tableau by default thinks that this is a continuous thing, a green thing. That's why I have an axis. But I'm going to right click and make it a discrete thing, a blue thing, because I know I want it to draw as a header. So now I've got that index here instead. My last step is I'm going to create a calculated field. I will say I won't recreate the parameter, but I want to show you the parameter. I built a top in parameter. It is an integer. The current value is 25. I specified a range. So this will match what Klaus did to some degree with the offset, where they can pick somewhere between 5 and 25. It's an integer, so it's a whole number. So we're going to use that in my calculated field. And now I'm just going to go in and I'm going to say limit to top n. Let me put a 4 in front so we know which one it is. And I'm just going to hold down my control key and drag this in. And I want this to be less than or equal to my top in parameter. This is another Boolean. Nothing happens when I add it on there. And I might even add it on to color so you can see. There's the top 25. If I change this down, let's just set it to the top 15. If I can get there, there are the top 15. So our last step, instead of it being on color, is to drag it up and put it on the filter shelf. And I want this to be set to true. Now we've got just those top 15. And as I drag this and change it, or if I were to go back here, I can specify what I want to be there. Now, the big value of this is that we are filtered to a state. Now, if you're saying, Anne, I know how to do this with a context filter, that's fine. You're right. You can do this multiple ways. This one's a very friendly way to do it because table calculations happen so late in the process. This method is likely to work in every scenario when you set it up because the index will happen after all of your blue filters, all of your dimension filters along the way. Okay, I know we're close on time. Do we have time for one more example?
We're pretty tight here, Anne, and I know Enid has something that she needs to do, as well as we got to give away another one of your books. Is it something you could wrap up in a minute or two?
Yes, I will wrap it up very quickly by not rebuilding and purely showing. So let me do this because this is a really good trick for you all to see. I'm going to do two things really quickly, which is first, let me go and look at this. So imagine you're building a KPI and you want to show the percent difference compared to a year. So I want to know if 2022 is doing better than 2021. So we're going to build this out from scratch. I'm going to clear this table calculation so you can see what it is. Right now, I just have the sum of sales, and let me just drag out a new copy so that it's no longer this weird format on there. So all I've got, is let me just clear out our format. We can see that. So I want the percent difference between 2021 and 2022. Let me show the header so you can see it. So quickly, if I right click, do a quick table calculation and do the percent difference, you can see that 21.44% is greater than. Here's my trick for you today. If you right click and you hide 2021, now you just have that percentage difference for that specific scenario. So when you look at this and deconstruct the workbook, that's all that's done. We've hidden 2021 because that's our comparison. We don't need to see it. And instead we just show the 2022% diff. And I
That
was,
one, Anne.
yeah,
That question only comes up about 30 times a week.
yeah,
Yeah,
great opportunity to hide, to use that hide capability, particularly with table calculations. I find that super helpful. I'll go ahead and stop sharing, and I will say again, it's on my Tableau public. I do encourage you to unpack the workbook and see how those examples are done.
And as always, you were spectacular. Absolutely great. Absolutely great.
Thank you.
Raj, I think we got to give away another book.
Yes, and we are set to find out who that is. Let me just quickly share my screen. Yeah. So here we go. Okay, it is still moving. It's probably just frozen at my end. We'll get the name once it is completed. Which could be any. So it's Christiana Sobogan. If I have called out a name properly, it's Christiana Sobogan. Congratulations. And please send us your email ID. We'll send out the book for you.
Okay. So are we ready to start the Kahoot part?
I believe we are. Klaus,
Okay.
are you set to go there?
Yeah, I am set. Let me.
Okay, well, go ahead and share your screen.
Okay. Okay, can you guys see my screen? So you guys if you guys want to participate, this is to get the free 1 year e-learning. And I'll just give it a second. So this one was based more on what Klaus and Jim did last time. So it might be a little bit of a review for some of you guys who joined us last time. If not, you might learn something new. Give it a couple more seconds. Big crowd.
Oh, this joining in. You know, the website is looking at like full visualization animation. The names are coming up and that's just adjusting it out.
It's crazy.
Lot-
Things are going on very quickly.
Yeah.
Yep, lots of
Yes.
great
we have
participation.
people.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank
Well,
you so much,
Alright.
everybody.
I would say it's all because of table calculations.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I say by 1:21 we'll start since we're running short on time.
Yeah.
Probably.
And you can play also. You just can't win.
Yeah, I want to see how fast I am if I am a Tableau newbie or not.
Okay.
They're really basic questions, so you probably are gonna get it super fast. All right, I think we can start. I don't see anybody joining. Oh, we just got one more. All right, we're starting.
Okay, here we go. Drum roll.
Okay, which is it's not an example of a calculation. Five seconds left.
Which is not an example of a type.
So insight calculation.
Yay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's see the leaderboard.
T-dub.
T-dub. Awesome.
This is just a little tidbit. Basic calculations allow you to create and save a new column of data in your data source that derive from your values of your pre-existing columns in your data source. And then the example I was giving here was like using birthdays, like, and then grouping them into different generations. Another quiz time. Okay, once I hit enter and I get a calculated field, what happens if I drag the pill into the data bin? Yeah, and this was another one that Anne showed us. You could also take it from the data pen and drag it into create your own calculations above that.
Yeah, this tip actually helped a lot. You know,
So Wendy, you're on top of it.
awesome.
And then again, I'm just telling you about table calculations. And then basic calculations versus table calculations. Like, I know this is sometimes a question. The big way to answer this is, do you already have all the table values that you need in the visualization? And then this is a little like chart. If you do not have it, you use a basic expression. And if you do have it, you use a table calculation. Okay, so say you're interested in why a company's product shipping costs are higher than the average, what calc would you use? Okay, so window average is the one we would use.
And
And
OJ.
LJ. Okay.
And then what do LEDs stand?
I like the blue option, loss of day.
And was that you on place second?
It's me.
Wow.
I'm on the podium.
Yeah, it's a tight group up top too.
Yeah.
Alex.
Alex.
okay.
Oh, Megan, and it even tells you who climbed the most. It's pretty cool. Okay, how can I find the average profit of all the orders within a country, even if there are multiple items in order? Oh, this one was a trick question. So it's the include because of the multiple items, but I did give you why is it not fixed? It's not fixed because fixed needs to have unique worldwide codes. At the same time, the data uses some ID orders independently in multiple countries. Fix only cares about the order ID. Fix is ignoring the country dimension, and it takes the sum per order ID. So Anne, third place. Rebecca M, second place, and our winner, Alex.
Yay.
Awesome.
Yay.
Congrats, Alex.
Nice. Congrats, Alex.
Alex, if you would direct message Enid with your email address, it would help. I think that wraps us up. Klaus, I think we got one more slide where we want to
Yeah.
talk about what happens next.
Okay, so next meeting is already scheduled for October 13th. So this, I think, is a good point to grab your phone and grab that QR code, or you can also register from the link, of course. And we would be more than happy to see you back in October. And you can also already put December 1st in your calendar for our last meeting of the year.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for attending. I want to thank our special guest, Anne. Anne, I am trapped in the LOD zone. I have to make more and better use of table calculations. You've shown me today that I've got a long way to go and to grow. And I thank everybody for attending, and a really great meeting. Bye now.
Bye-bye, and thanks,
Bye.
Anne.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Anne.
Thanks.
Thank you. It was an awesome session.
That was very good, guys. And you're terrific. Of course, you knew that. You didn't need me to tell you that. You're terrific.
Was I
But,
slow enough, Raj? Was it slow?
Yeah.
You were good, but at time, I think towards the end, I think people were lost because they were, probably
Go fast.
confused. Should they look at for Tableau calculation or your tips,
Then I'm
the
sorry. I'm gonna
benefit
stop
we have
the
a-
recording
Enid-
and yeah. Sorry about that.
Ed doesn't know this, but in the last meeting, Klaus and I talked too much, kind of like we did today, but we talked too much. And Enid didn't get to do that presentation last time. And it was like, oh, we got to get her on this time. I was getting daggers through through her eyes. I could see, okay, we've got to get her on today. So thank you for doing that, Enid. It was great.
Thank you.
Sorry, guys,
Although
I'm gonna
honestly,
stop
I
the
was like,
recording. Yeah, sorry.
honestly, I was like, Anne is